If you've studied the list of speakers, you will realize, as I did after careful thought about it, that I think what our planning committee had in mind was speakers who could testify to Bill Buckley's impact on various aspects of the cosmos. I would imagine that David Keene is here as a representative, perhaps in a general sense, of the younger generation to testify what Bill Buckley has meant to it. Nobody is better qualified to speak on that subject. Not only has David Keene served as a young and highly important and high-ranking member of the staff of Senator Buckley and in the campaigns of Governor Reagan, but he is, as you know, better than anybody else, a former national chairman of Young Americans for Freedom in his own right. So he gets the privilege of kicking off this evening, and I call first on Mr. David Keene.
Thank you, Bill. Stan, I think that was a damn beating of Bill to tell the audience not to get on him. You know, as I came up here, this is something I've never done before, participate in a roast, and they tell me that the problem with the leadoff position is that you're supposed to break the ice. And I think that selecting me to do that proves that Young Americans for Freedom has a sense of humor, if they think I can do it. You know, but YAF has changed a lot since I was active in the organization. And although this is quite a crowd, those of you familiar with the old days know that when I was chairman, we used to purge more people in a year than there are delegates to this convention. But seriously, this is quite a crowd. And just look at the people Bill has as friends. Just goes to show how we conservatives have changed. Bill Buckley used to write books defending Joe McCarthy. Now he writes columns defending Henry Kissinger. But we haven't all changed. On my way to dinner tonight, a 67-year-old yapper in a day-glow orange leisure suit asked me who I thought was running the CFR while Dr. Kissenger was here with us for dinner. Fortunately, I was able to leave him with his faith intact. I assured him that Dr. Kissenger would be back on the job in the morning. But Bill Buckley is one man who's never forgotten his roots. Even though there is a new Bill Buckley who spends his time skiing with John Kenneth Galbraith in Switzerland, we all remember the old Bill Buckley. And I suspect it's he who we're honoring here this evening. You remember him. He's the fellow who wanted to horsewhip Drew Pearson and call a priest to exorcise Earl Warren from the Supreme Court building. The question, it would seem to me, is which is the real Bill Buckley? And that, I suspect, is a question his new friends will be asking themselves before the evening is over. Actually, you know, in addition to there being an old and a new Bill Buckley, there are really many Bill Buckleys. And you'll probably hear about most of them tonight. There's Bill Buckley, the speaker, the writer, and the publisher. Bill Buckley, the statesman and world traveler. Bill Buckley, the harpsichordist. And yes, my friends, there's even Bill Buckley, the conservative. But I'd like to talk briefly about still another Bill Buckley. Bill Buckley, the backroom politician. The Colonel House, or perhaps I should say the Charlie Kerbel of the American right. A man to whom we've always been able to go to for advice over the years, and who's always been willing to give us advice, even when we haven't gone to him. And he's always been willing to call the tough ones. and I must say that for this on occasion, the poor man's been criticized. Indeed, there are those in this room tonight who have suggested from time to time that William F. Buckley Jr., of all people, has strayed from the path of conservative righteousness, and that he has committed a sin that we as conservatives all know to be mortal, the sin of inconsistency. But in preparing for my presentation this evening, I have scrutinized the record, and I can assure you that the charge is unfounded. In the arena of political affairs, William F. Buckley Jr. has always been consistently wrong. In fact, the only man I know who has been wrong more often politically is Stan Evans, who, dare we say it, learned everything he knows about politics from Bill. But then perhaps some of our political leaders should have followed Bill's advice. After all, he was able to see clearly in 1964 that if Barry Goldwater had only had the foresight to select Dwight Eisenhower as his running mate, he could have won. In 1968, the man didn't hesitate for a moment to suggest that Richard Nixon ought to have selected John Gardner as his running mate. It sounded silly at the time, of course, but think of it. If Nixon had but followed Bill's advice, there'd have been no common cause. John Gardner would be in the slammer after pleading nolo contendere to a tax charge. And Spiro Agnew would be running as a reform candidate for governor in Maryland. But you know, the politicians did listen to him once in a while. Ronald Reagan was here the other night, which reminded me of the fact that in 1968 at the Republican convention in Miami, Ronald Reagan was there, Bill Buckley was there, standing shoulder to shoulder with Richard Nixon. You know, all a politician really has to do to be a good politician is to be a good judge of people. And it's this department that Bill has really excelled. After all, he gave Gary Wills his start as a journalist. And he endorsed Allard Lowenstein here for Congress last year on the grounds that he is smarter than most of those now serving in that body. And you notice that Allard almost forgot what time the dinner was this evening. Why, Bill's such a good judge of people that I am told that he was once able to determine that Edgar Smith, the man he had never met, was innocent of a crime just by corresponding with him. Maybe that's why he received letters this morning from David Berkowitz and Marvin Mandel. It was my faith in Bill's judgment that led me last year, when John Sears wanted to know how we were going to sell this fella Dick Schweiker to the American conservative community, to suggest that I fly to New York and talk to Bill. I knew we could count on his judgment then, as we'd counted on it in the past, and he came through with flying colors. But enough of Bill's domestic political experience. Had to skip that one. He's also quite an analyst of international affairs. In fact, it surprised me that while Dr. Kissenger was Secretary of State, he didn't call on Bill more often. After all, I'm told they became good friends attending those regular secret meetings of the Bilderberger Society. Think of it. Dr. Kissinger could have prevailed to have whichever president appoint Bill to be our ambassador to the court of St. James. After all, he is the only person we know who has written an entire book on how to handle a British monarch. I could go on, of course, but as a former employer of Dr. Kissinger's once said, that would be wrong. So I'll close by saying first that whatever we may say about Bill, we appreciate what he's done for us, just as Daniel Patrick Moynihan appreciates what he's done for him. And secondly, to further bolster his international reputation, I'd like to read a telegram that was received too late to be read earlier in the dinner. Bill, sorry I can't be with you tonight, but I understand our mutual friend Henry Kissenger is there to keep you in line. Incidentally, your lifetime pass that will allow the Cyrano free passage through our canal is being forwarded under separate cover. Yours in freedom, General Torrijos. One second of seriousness. One can only poke fun at their friends. Their enemies don't deserve it, and Bill Buckley has always been and will always be a friend of everyone in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Now that you've used up all the material with the rest of us for I trust you're prepared for repetition out there. Dave didn't miss much. We do have some telegrams that the YAF management tells me, I stress tells me, were received from various notables. I wonder. You take this one. Dear Bill, what do you mean the electric circuits in your Swiss villa are AC/DC? Signed, Anita Bryant. I doubt that, and on the other, just as I doubt that the telegram from the editors of the Encyclopedia Britannica, just what the hell does immanentize the eschaton mean? On the other hand, there's a ring of truth about this one. Bill, I hear disturbing reports that the networks are trying to take away your TV show. I urge you to fight against this action by telling the networks I bought it, I paid for it, and I intend to keep it. Signed, Ronald Reagan. Yeah. We'll have some more messages later, but now to our next speaker. This one, I take it, represents the conservative community, but more generally than its youth aspect, since he has gone on to head its, probably its principal organizational manifestation at the, what shall I call it, Stan, the non-youth level would be, I guess, the best. Pleasure for me because I have never found myself, I think I'm right in saying, disagreeing with Stan Evans on anything at all. If I should predecease him, which is quite likely since I'm a good many years older, and you ever wonder where Bill Rusher would have stood on some subject, ask Stan, because his position will be mine. Politically speaking, we are clones. I didn't say clowns, I said clones. And it is therefore with a great deal of personal affection and pride that I call upon our next speaker, the immediate past chairman of the American Conservative Union, Stan Evans.
Thank you very much. I hope you will indulge me for a moment as I attempt a little bit of autobiographical reminiscence involving Bill. I first met him many years ago at Yale during what was the Stone Age of campus conservatism. And at that time, just to give you a picture of what the ideological imperatives were, we formed a conservative club with Bill's advice. And it was a rather small club, but the first thing we did after we formed it was to make it smaller by conducting a purge. And it was discovered that some of the members were not ideologically sound. And we decided that in order to make certain that the softballs did not corrupt our councils, we would have certain credenda to which they would have to give their allegiance. The first of these was that anyone who wanted to be a member of our conservative club had to be in favor of repealing the income tax. And the second was that they had to support with no questions asked both the goals and the methods of Senator Joe McCarthy. Now, I say that to give you an idea of what the atmospherics were on the Yale campus at that time, but for the benefit of some of our guests who are not hardcore conservatives, I would point out that this was over 20 years ago, and I was young and idealistic. And in the intervening years, I gradually drifted to the right. Now, Bill's own experience in that intervening period has been a bit different. And I think it's time to shatter some of the mythology that surrounds this man. First of all, the myth that he has carefully cultivated, that he attended Yale University. He was around the campus, but in fact, I know personally Bill ran a car wash in West Haven and hung around the campus in his leather jacket and his ducktails. And I remember coming into a lounge in Berkeley College one day and found him staring vacantly at a television set that was featuring the Saturday afternoon roller derby. He looked at me, and the first words he ever spoke to me, I will never forget, he said, "Hey, kid, where do you go around here to pick up girls?" Since we shared this common interest, we developed a fast friendship, and I saw that beneath the rough exterior there was a glimmer of promise. And some of us at Yale took this rather crude young man. We had him blow dry his ducktail, dressed him in a rumpled cord jacket, and sent him to an acting school to learn to speak with a British accent. The rest is history. Bill, over the years, has been dramatically transformed. He now not only is the nation's premier spokesman for conservatism of a kind, but he is our ambassador to the counterculture. He not only was the first major conservative to advocate decriminalization of marijuana, he was also the first to wear puka shells, to appreciate punk rock, and to sniff glue. Bill is also into the occult. He enjoys Kabbalistic readings, Ouija board, and speaking in tongues. Studies that have helped him enormously in trying to interpret Dr. Kissinger's policies to conservatives. But he also, as Dave Keene has pointed out, has a very serious practical bent and is known for his novel political insights. Dave has referred to some of them, Al Lowenstein for Congress, the Panama Canal, and so forth. But he is also good on some of the so-called social issues. I remember discussing with Bill about 5 years ago his rather unique view of the population problem. He had calculated that somewhere in the world, every 7 seconds, a woman was giving birth to a baby. And he said to me with that flare of brilliance that is so characteristic of him, he said, Stan, the obvious solution is find that woman and stop her. He has also exhibited magnificent foresight, as when in 1972 he warned Dr. Kissinger that the trouble with capitulating to Red China is that in a couple of hours you want to do it again. I'm glad Russia is enjoying this. Let me move sort of to a conclusion here on the human side of Bill. He is not simply a political analyst and a TV star and all the other things that you see in this public demeanor. He's also a very, very human guy. And this is a story I know he would not like me to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I think it's so characteristic. A few years ago, a man who was trying to raise some money for a charitable cause went to Bill and said, Bill, I know that you're rather well-to-do. You have a lot of money. Our records show that you have such and such resources and own such stocks and you have so much cash and whatnot. And our records show that you are fully capable of contributing a certain amount to this cause. Bill became irate. He said, so that's what your records show, is it? Do your records show that I have an aged mother? Do your records show that I have a brother in an institution? Do your records show that I have countless relatives who have very little money? And he said, if I don't give anything to them, what makes you think I'm going to give anything to you? Let me leave you with the words that Bill addressed to us at the Sharon Conference almost 17 years ago, words that I, for one, will never forget, and I think that all young people should take to their heart, particularly some of the young ladies here. Bill said to us about 3 a.m. as we considered what we had achieved there at Sharon, he said, I want you young people to remember this. Never get in a car with a stranger unless he offers you candy.
Stan, you never fail. Thank you very much. We're suffering a little bit electronically here in an effort to make this all easily audible to you, which I hope it now is. We have got a boomerang effect which makes roughly 50% of the witticisms inaudible to those at the head table. But we keep telling each other bits and pieces of what we have just heard, and I think we've got most of it together. If there is some repetition later on, that'll be the reason why. And now to the next speaker. Bill Buckley is, by his own frequent admission, the man who introduced Henry Kissinger to Richard Nixon. This datum has tended to disappear from recent editions of Bill's lengthening curriculum vitae. And it is not clear whether this is owing to mere space considerations or the onset of a highly selective amnesia as Bill advances into his 50s, or whether he is omitting it at the request of Mr. Kissinger, or just possibly of Mr. Nixon. In any case, the basic fact of the introduction, that is, remains, as I understand it, true, and if so, surely no man ever deserved more richly an opportunity to retaliate for what no doubt seemed at the time so clearly a failure. He is here tonight to claim that opportunity. I ask you to give a warm welcome to the man Bill Buckley introduced to Richard Nixon, Dr. Henry Kissinger.
Chairman, Mr. Buckley, I would like to express, first of all, my appreciation to Mr. Buckley for having made it possible for me to meet a group that is terrified of the Council of Foreign Relations. And the Bilderberg meeting. As somebody who has spent many stupefying hours in these distinguished institutions, I hope you do not devote too many of your undoubtedly profound deliberations to worrying about the impact they might have on anything except insomnia. I see Bill Buckley here with a manuscript and frantically taking notes. So I feel like the Christian who entered the arena confronting a lion and decided he was going to talk him into some restraint. And he was talking to him for a while, and the lion seemed to be paying some attention. He said, "By God, we are communicating." The lion said, "I don't know about you, but I am saying grace." Bill Buckley came to see me with a group of his colleagues periodically when I was in the White House and in the State Department. And insofar as I could tell, he represented their extreme left wing. Their attitude towards me can be summed up by the experience of somebody who attended a communist meeting that was being raided by the police, and the fellow was being shoved into a police wagon, and he shouted, "But I am an anti-communist." The policeman hit him over the head once again and said, "I don't care what kind of a communist you are." And who else could have brought before this group a combination of myself and Allard Lowenstein, who for the first 5 years of my term in office used to exhibit me to some of his disciples as an example of the depths human depravity could reach before the conservative elements in this country took over. I have made a firm decision not to talk about the policy of the new administration that Mr. Lowenstein so ably represents. And I know he is reflecting as of this moment about whether human rights should really be extended to extreme conservative groups. But I must say that my successor has been on several missions to the Middle East, trying to urge the Israelis and the Arabs to sit down and talk reasonably. It is a futile quest. Anybody who knows these people should realize that it is impossible for either Israelis or Arabs to talk while sitting down. Now, Bill and I, and this may finish him with this group, have been friends for over 20 years. We have many things in common. We both have Irish wives. We both can speak for 10 minutes without placing a verb. And we both speak with an accent. Bill came to my attention when he wrote God and Man at Yale. As I understand it, they are trying to make a movie of this book right now. And the negotiations are held up on the issue that Bill insists that he must play every part himself. If I may say a serious word, neither Bill and I, or this group and I, have always agreed. Well, not even the YAF can be right 100% of the time. from your perspective, there may have been an insufficient militancy towards some of your pet objections. From my perspective, it seemed that on some of the issues that were of grave concern, that could gradually undermine the position of the United States, there was more emphasis on liturgy than on the immediate problems, on issues such as Angola or assistance for Vietnam or aid to Turkey. I sometimes felt that some of the passion that was so deeply spent on other issues could well have found an outlet. But whatever our disagreements, Bill Buckley has been an important factor in my life, in a world in which nothing is more important than to rescue the individual from bureaucrats who administer their regulations. Without love and without hatred, simply pursuing abstract norms. He has always stood for humanity. I have always admired his chivalry. And in many critical decisions in my life, I have asked Bill's advice, even as he deplored some of my conclusions, because I could always count on his values. And for all these reasons, the day may come, a few decades from now, when I will forgive Bill for the way he introduced me on his program when he said Henry Kissenger reminds him of an athlete who's being carried around the arena to the applause of the audience while some other athlete is winning the contest.
Thank you, Dr. Kissenger. During these talks, telegrams have continued to pour in, and they are improving slightly in quality. Everyone here says greetings to all those gathered at the Buckley Roast tonight. It is untrue that I am in the least hostile to Bill Buckley. As a matter of fact, I think he's cute, signed Corbett up. Nice little one came in. Bill, deeply grateful for your loyal help in my recent campaign. Best wishes to all present. Signed, Brother Jim. Not sure about this one. Would like your valued advice on handling personal finances. I understand from Bill Rusher that you're an expert. Signed, Bert Lance. And with a slight sense of deja vu, I read a telegram. Bill, deeply grateful for your loyal help in my recent campaign. Best wishes to all present, Pat Moynihan. And last, but surely far from least, dear Bill, a prior commitment on the Gong Show keeps me from attending your roast this evening. Certainly your assistance was invaluable to me when you were in the Senate. Signed, Gerald Ford. If Dave Keene represented the influences that Bill has had on youth, and Stan Evans spoke for his impact on the conservative community generally, and Dr. Kissenger might be said to have been assigned the job of speaking for his impact on governmental policy, perhaps on the executive side, our next speaker quite clearly rises to address the question, I'm tempted to say the problem, of Bill Buckley from the standpoint of liberalism. He is not only a longtime chairman and gray eminence of the National Student Association. He went on to run for Congress, and indeed for a time to serve in Congress as a Democratic representative from New York State. And he is now, if I have tracked him carefully and correctly, the United States representative to UNESCO in Geneva, and therefore luxuriates in the title of ambassador. He has also, unlike many liberals, enjoyed the personal endorsement of our guest of honor. And I suspect it is only fair then that he should come here to respond. Perhaps I can leave it at this, that I sleep better at nights knowing that Al Lowenstein is in Switzerland. Al, come on up.
It has reaffirmed my confidence in the accuracy and insight of Bill Rusher and the National Review to be introduced thus accurately as the United States representative to UNESCO in Geneva, since UNESCO is in Paris and I am not our representative to it wherever it is.
Well, I was close.
But I'm glad you're sleeping better on the theory that I'm in Geneva. It's a great consolation to know I've done something for Bill Rusher's sleep. It is clear that when it came time to find somebody who, following Keene, Evans, and Kissenger, could clean up in the role of cleanup speaker, they had to turn to me.